let's start with that snack.
Yes, so chapter three of Mistborn here by Brandon Sanderson. So a little snack before the meal. So the vibe I got from this was like maybe this is the Lord Ruler talking about it here because he's talking about his lands to the south and
Hmm.
that they're flat. And then when he talks about in here that maybe his lands would look less dreary if there were a few mountains. I was like,
Ah.
oh, did he somehow using, allomancy or something like that, uh, like basically make these mountains, like these volcanoes pop up, and that's what all this ash is coming from? Just kind of
Hmm.
what I was
Interesting.
thinking.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting.
So,
I like where
but
your head's at. I like where your head's at. It's a great snack, and I think I'm yeah, I just love that we are arriving in Terrace, right? Like it's Terrace is kind of named as like a place.
right.
And I think that's also kind of fun.
Well, when you go to the map at the
Yeah.
beginning of the book,
Yeah.
terrace dominance is up at the top. So we've
Yes.
got right in the middle, like Luthadel, and it's a central dominus. We've got an eastern dominus, a northern dominus, a western dominus, farmost dominance, southern
Mm-hmm.
dominance, and then terrace dominance, which is up at the top of the map,
Right.
kind of in the mountains. So I'm assuming that's where whoever this is talking is. That's
Yeah.
where they've arrived. So,
Right.
um, but yeah, we'll see.
I love it.
So jumping into the main meal, I feel like probably my recap's gonna go pretty quick because while a lot uh, was said and we learned a lot of things, I felt like the lead up to that was kind of it's good. I feel like the recap of it's gonna be pretty quick. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Nice.
Cayman's sitting around his lair, counting out his coins. Everybody's really excited. Everyone seems to be drinking, having a good time, except for Vin. She is still not about this whole. We just, practically stole all this green from the canton of, or canton, as the book would say, of finance. So she's still very much worried. It's so much so that she's like, hey, I need to leave here, but she really doesn't want to leave by herself. And so she goes up to Eulif. He's sitting with some of the other people, and she's like, "Hey, we gotta go. We gotta get out of here. Something bad's getting ready to go down." All the other, of course, minions who are near him are like, "Oh, you guys are about to go do the dirty," and he's like, "You want to go somewhere alone with me?" And she's like, "No, you fucking moron! Like, listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth." And so, after kind of trying to get him to come, she's like, "All right, just wait here. I'll be right back." She goes back to the kind of the sleeping area, goes to her bedroll, starts to pack up some of her belongings, and so a couple things that she grabs. So she grabs an earring that belonged to her mother,
Mhm.
um, and then uh, a pebble from each city that she's ever visited, and then the last thing's a bit of obsidian the size of a large coin, and it was chipped into an irregular pattern, and that her brother Reen had carried it as some kind of good luck charm. It was the only thing he'd left behind when he'd snuck away from the crew about half a year before. I feel like that's going to come into play a little more too, this obsidian. Um,
Mm.
so tell me, maybe I'm assuming you know what obsidian is what?
It's a type of volcanic
Right.
rock. Yeah, it's a type of volcanic rock. It is like described well. Very, very sharp, very black, kind of shiny. But
Is it
yeah,
very
definitely.
porous? That the in my mind I'm thinking it's got like holes all over it, but is that not?
No, it absolutely can be, but usually when it depends on kind of where you're finding it. It will also like condense into like a shiny, almost like glass,
Oh,
like
okay.
smooth and sharp and kind of shardolin in nature, if that's a word. Yeah, I'd say. It can be both. Like it can be found in both forms because it's kind of like connected to volcanoes, so things are melting
Sure.
and condensing and pushing and stuff like that.
Sure. Well, I feel like based on what you just gave me, we've got a podcast here called Shards and Shenanigans. And I
That's
don't
right.
really
Yeah.
know what shards are in this book. When we came up with this name, as we talked about before, you were like, "Oh, that's perfect. This is gonna go well. It fits." And I
Yeah.
had no idea why it fit. And so maybe this shard of obsidian has something to do with that. But
I like it. I don't want to lead you astray with any word choices either. But yeah, I like where your
yeah,
head's at. I'll leave it
yeah.
at that.
So
I like that you're paying attention. I'll say to what Vin's getting, like
well,
to
she's
before she didn't just run
right,
out.
and she's got nothing.
She has to get this
She's
stuff.
practically got
Yeah,
nothing. So
exactly. So like, why she's getting this stuff.
right. So she's got the obsidian. She gets her pebbles, her
The
puts
pebbles
the
and
earring
some,
in,
yeah,
which she didn't
yeah,
even
right,
ever
right.
want to wear because she thought I'd make her look too feminine.
Yeah, right.
And basically has no money. But her brother taught her how to scavenge, and she's gonna basically just try to figure it out. And maybe Ulif, he knows a lot of people in the city. Maybe they can kind of figure it out. And so she goes back out to the common area, and she sees what's going on. Ulif is fucking her over.
Oh yeah.
Telling came in.
Can't trust anybody.
Yeah, Telling came in about kind of what she said, and because it definitely, I mean, from an outside person who has no like maybe wasn't there at the ministry when all this went down and isn't feeling the same things that she's feeling, it definitely can feel like she is like maybe she did tip somebody off and she's just like, hey,
Right.
let's get out of here. And so I could definitely see why someone like Cayman would have such a strong reaction here, where he's like, oh, you're running away, and she bolts for the door, and he just pegs her square in the back with a stool, which is, I mean, pretty, if we're being honest, impressive. Like, I mean, I don't,
Oh yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
love it.
totally.
I don't love it, but,
No, I hate it. But it is
from
impressive.
across the room.
Yeah.
And then he just starts wailing on her. And so she uses something in her. She doesn't understand what, that gives her strength. And some of the pain starts to go away. The pain becomes a focus, is how it's worded, and she slowly climbs back to her feet. But before she can even really get up, Cayman's back, right on top of her, and is just going back in on her. She's trying to do her best. She uses her luck a little bit, sees kind of his eyes soften, but it's not enough. And his anger comes back super hard, super terrifying. And she feels like at this point that this is going to be different. Before she's been beaten. But this time she sees this rage and murder in his eyes. And she's like, this is it for me. Like, she's very, very concerned. Next thing you know, that the door to the stairwell to exit out of the lair bursts open before Cayman could do anything, and kind of final, and we don't know what's going on, but there's someone standing there, and Cayman, he looks over, glares at the door, no one knows kind of what's going on, and I can't remember, I want to say, does he get thrown off her? I'm trying to see. Oh, here we go. Actually, I wanted to bring this up because this is our first, I feel like, real description of Kelsier's, his features.
Yeah.
So
there's some good description.
We've got, he's a man standing in the stairwell. He's got a tall and hawk face, light blonde hair, wore a relaxed nobleman's suit. His cloak's hanging free, and maybe in his mid-30s, was wearing no hat, did not carry a dueling cane. And he looked pretty mad. And so Cayman's like, "What's this? Who are you?" And Vin's thinking, "How did this guy even get in here? We've got scouts out there." Um, and so he kind of looks at Vin and has some like kindness in his eyes, but then looks back up at Cayman and gets really, angry. Um, and so
Nice.
Cayman gets thrown backwards as if, like by some invisible force, and the room falls quiet. Next thing you know, everyone, including Vin, starts to feel at ease and peaceful, and she quickly realizes that, this newcomer is using some kind of luck, and she thinks that he's using it on everybody all at once, which she can't even fathom because she can barely use it on one person at a time, let alone, however many people are in here. I'm guessing, 20, 30, something like that.
It's so awesome.
So pretty awesome. Cool. Next thing we know, someone's behind Kelsier, and we learn that it's Doxson, which he's got a fun nickname in here, Dox, which we first hear.
Yes. I love it. So good.
So they come in, and we see that Cayman's like, "Oh, Doxson, like, what a surprise." And he's like, "Yep, here we are." And then it hits Vin where she saw these guys, because she had some recognition when they came in, and she's like, she's been trying to rack her brain, like, where do I know them from? And she's like, "Oh, the Canton of Finance. They were sitting in the waiting room." She remembers seeing them when her and Cayman left. So Cayman climbs to his feet, and he realizes that the person that came in, Kelsier, is the survivor Hathson. He sees the overlapping scars, which I think is an interesting point. So obviously, Kelsier is not just well known amongst like the farming communities and the people out in the fields around the city, but he is clearly known by lots of people, lots of ska. And so I don't know if I should bring this up now or later. I'll just bring it up now so I don't forget. But it kind of makes me wonder, if he's called the survivor of Hathson. And obviously we know that these pits of Hathson are these bad places where people go. Right. Did he escape? Was he set free by somebody? Did whoever owns the pits or runs the pits let him go because of some, something he did? We don't have that backstory yet, but I started thinking about that while I was reading this chapter.
Totally. How come he's the survivor?
Right. And it sounds like no one else really ever leaves that place. So what makes him special and how did it happen? So
right. Yeah. Nice. I like where your head's at.
So Cayman's like, wow, it's Kelsier, like, and not only do they know him as the survivor Hathson, but they also know his actual name, Kelsier, because they're using it. So like, not only do they know someone survived, they know who it was. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And so Cayman's like, "Oh, this is an honor," and Kelsier's like, "Nope, I'm not listening to you." And Cayman's thrown back again, by these invisible,
love to see
invisible, dare I say, weaves.
Right. I like it. Nice.
So Kelsier, basically throws him to the side and decides to, he's like, "Hey, does everybody know who I am?" And everyone slowly nods their head, and he's like, "Good, you guys owe me a great debt." He kind of tells them about how that he just saved all their lives, that Cayman basically botched the scam that they were running, and that an Inquisitor, a Steel Inquisitor, was going to be following them back, and that he took care of this Inquisitor. And everyone's kind of dumbfounded. Yeah. Everyone's like, doesn't even know what to think. Of it. Including Vin. She's like, "Oh my gosh, who is this guy? And what does it even mean to be able to take care of a Steel Inquisitor?" So
dealt with him.
Yeah.
Dealt with. Okay.
So Kelsier says, "I require payment for these services for basically taking care of you guys and not letting you all, I'm assuming, get killed." And so the room's still, but then finally some new character, Milev. He's a dark-skinned man who came in second in command. His underling, first mate here. He grabs the box of all the boxings that they just basically got and handed it right over to Kelsier. Said, "Here's everything we've got. It's 3,000 boxings." And Kelsier kind of is like, "Okay, and introduces Milev." Introduces himself, and Kelsier gives him some pleasantries and is like, "Oh, you're much smarter and more. You've definitely got some guts here," which I thought was just
He
like,
calls him crewmaster.
yeah.
He calls him crewmaster.
So, which I just don't think is obviously any kind of real flattery. I think he's just kind of being like, "Oh yes," like that's just and so
reveling in it.
And so he tells Milev to deal with Cayman, and he's like, "Yeah, we'll make him a beggar. The Lord Ruler hates beggars in the city." And Vin thinks, Milev will dispose of Cayman as soon as Kelsier isn't paying attention.
Right.
So then Kelsier and Docs are talking about, hey, we were going to use Club's shop later, but that's not really a neutral location if he doesn't join in on us. So they decide, hey, let's try to have our meeting tonight here, which we still don't know what's about. Probably their big plan. And he tells Milev, hey, we're planning a job here. I could use some local support. Takes out about 100 or so of the boxings, hands it over to him, and says, to start, we're going to use your safe house tonight. Get out. And so
pays him with his own boxings, and then kicks him out.
That's pretty badass.
Savage.
So everyone leaves, and as they're leaving, Kelsier is like, "Hey, take the guys in the back as well that are spying on us through these portholes or spy holes." And Milev's kind of embarrassed, and he's like, "Yep, of course." And so he's like, "I want to talk to Vin here," and everyone's kind of like, "Oh God, how does he even know Vin? What's going on?" Vin's especially like, "Oh fuck, what does this guy want from me?"
Right.
So he finally gets her alone with him and Doxson, and once they're alone, Kelsier's like, "That was so much fun. I haven't had that much fun in a while." And Doxson's like, "Man, you've really I don't know how I'm going to handle you now that you've got this reputation about you," which I'm assuming just refers to the survivor of Hathson, kind of.
Yeah, right.
Vibe.
Yeah, they're just harping on each other. So good.
And so then they get right into talking with Vin, and she is, of course, confused, and they're like, "Do you want anything?" And she's like, "I guess I'll have a beer." They're going to have some wine. And she, I just want to make sure I get this timing right.
Doc starts looking for some wine.
Yeah, I see that.
And he's rummaging around, and then, Kelsier starts kind of chatting at Vin, but she's not really responsive.
Oh, okay. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. So she says that after they're looking for something to drink, that the calmness that she originally felt when they kicked the door open hit her again, and encouraged her to be kind of at ease, and she fought it off, and she's like, "No." And Kelsier, this piques his interest, raises an eyebrow and says, this is unexpected,
That's unexpected.
And so, offer her a drink. She wants ale, and they give her the glass, and she's like, "Who are you?" They tell her, "Hey, my name's Kelsier. I'm a crew leader." And they go into, we don't do the same thing that you do, and we're not predators. And Vin's like, "No, we're not predators. We're scavengers." And Kelsier kind of runs with that and is like, "Okay, yeah, we kind of do that too. We're just kind of the next level up, kind of a higher class of scavenger."
More well-bred.
Yeah.
Well-bred. It's interesting.
They say, she's like, "Are you noblemen?" And Kelsier's, "Well, not full-blooded ones." And she's like, "Well, half-breeds aren't supposed to exist." Um, and the ministry hunts them down, and Kelsier's like, "Well, you mean half-breeds like you?" and and
Oh.
she's shocked. How could he know this? And Kelsier's like, the Steel Ministry is not perfect. If they can miss you, they can miss others. And she said, "Milev, he called you Mistings. Those are kind of Alamancer, right?" So she clearly knows a little bit about Alamancy. Is it Alamancy? All right,
Yeah,
Alamancy.
nice. Nailed it.
And Doxson's impressed. He's like, she's observant. And Kelsier explains, yes, that they did call us Mistings, but we're not. That's not exactly correct. Dox and I are not technically Mistings. We do associate with them quite a bit. And so we learned quite a bit here about how Alamancy is the mystical power held by the nobility and was granted to them by the Lord Ruler some 1,000 years before, so quite a while ago, as a reward for the loyalty of the of kind of these noble people. So you're loyal to the Lord Ruler, he gives you some powers. That's the trade-off, it sounds like here. At least that's what is being clearly taught or espoused by the government or the ministry here.
Or the ministry. Yeah,
so we'll say
basic ministry doctrine.
Yes,
exactly.
And so the nobility basically had alamancy and privilege because of who their ancestors were, and the Ska were punished because of who their ancestors were. And that's kind of the world we're set up to believe.
Right.
So, Vin obviously knows some stuff about Mistine. She knows that like a single Mistine's power enough to like kill quite a few people, and that people didn't really talk about it, or if they did, they just talked about it in hushed tones. She never even considered that what she could do might have been along those same lines or that kind of thing before. And so Kelsier asks her, do you know what you did to the Obligator when you guys were in the Canton of Finance? And she's like, I used my luck. I use it to make people less angry. And Kelsier's like, so easier to scam. And she's like, yep. That's obviously what she's been doing for the last couple of years with Cayman. And so Kelsier's like, you're gonna have a lot to learn here and some new techniques, and you gotta exercise some caution, and we gotta teach you kind of what you can and can't do, and when you can't do it. And he's like, first kind of crude lesson right here before we even know a lot about what's going on. He's like, you never use emotional alamancy on an obligator, that they're trained, and that's who called the Inquisitor on you. And I mean, you basically almost got yourself killed is what he's telling her. And so this is where we find out, he's like, hopefully, or Doxson says, pray this guy doesn't track you down again. And Vin is kind of
preacher, he calls it.
Vin's kind of scared, and she's like, "Oh wait, you didn't kill this guy?" And then Kelsier's like, "Nope, I just distracted him, which was quite dangerous on its own." And kind of,
I can only imagine.
They talk about a little bit about these Inquisitors, and just really just how we don't even know anything about them or who they are or how they're still alive despite spikes in their eyes and that kind of thing. So this kind of leads us into Kelsier proffering out of his pocket this vial with these flecks, and he's like, you might not be drinking your ale, but you're going to be drinking this pretty willingly. And she's like, what is it? And he's like, I told you it'd be mysterious. And then Doxson is like fed up with it. And he's like, it's just alcohol and some metal. Like, Kelsier, come on. Like, so
being weird.
So I guess there's 2 of the 8 basic elementic metals in there, and Kelsier's like, if you want to know more about what's going on with you, what you can do, you're gonna have to drink this. And Vin pretty cleverly says, well, okay, like I don't want to get poisoned, so you drink half first. She's obviously paranoid. She doesn't know who these people are.
Right.
And so Kelsier shakes it up, takes down half, and then she takes down half. And so when she downs it, she reached for her luck like she normally does inside of her, does whatever she needs to do to try to kind of access that. And she is shocked at how much of this power is inside of her now and how much she can access. And she's never kind of had that before. So it's really stunning for her. And so Kelsier immediately jumps right into it and says, okay, like, do it, soothe me. And so she does it, and he's like, good. Now, can you try the other way? Can you kind of inflame my emotions, set me off? And she's never tried this before. And so when she goes inside and she reaches for this, she realizes now instead of there being kind of one pool of luck to draw off of, now there's 2. And which to me means the 2 different flecks of metal that were in the alcohol solution. And she quickly does the mental math of like, wow, there's 2 of these, but there's all in all there's 8 of them, and she's wondering what do all of them do, what are all of these powers that she might be able to harness. And so she thinks about it, reaches for that other source, and directs it at Kelsier, and he is very excited. He smiles wide, and he goes, that's it, like she did it. And Doxson immediately is like, I'm not sure like having 2 of you around is a good idea, like you're kind of enough. And so which I think it's interesting because it kind of seems to me that Doxson might not be a full Mistborn, which we'll get into here in a minute.
Right.
But because, well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it because it's coming right up here. And so Doxson's like, 2 though, and she's like, 2 what? And he goes on to explain that even among the nobility, that like the allomancy is super rare. Like, even though they're the ones that kind of are supposed to be born with this, not a lot of people are. It's not, more people are just born to have like maybe, nothing, or maybe one thing that they can access, which we learn is like if you are someone who can access one of the 8 elementic metals or powers, that you're a Mistian. And then if you can do 2, which Vin can, then you can do all 8. It's either 1 or 8 or none. That's how you're born. Yeah. And if you have all 8, you're a Mistborn.
Mistborn.
Yeah, finally. And so we learn that Ska can be, it is possible to find a Mistane in that. Like there's about 1 Mistane and about 10,000 mixed breed Ska, which is like a super small percentage, because like how many of the Ska are mixed breed? Like, and so, okay, like very few already I feel like are going to be a Mistane and have access to 1 power. And the fact that she has access to all 8, which is an even rarer thing, it's just got to be like 1, and it's like a needle in a haystack. So we've got Kelsier, who seems to be, and now her, and then he talks about, I've only met 1 other person like you, when he's talking to Vin. So who's this third mystery
one other
person? Nice. And so at first I was like, maybe it's Doxson, but then I realized, kind of based on the way they phrase it, that it's not. And so
nice.
It's kind of interesting. Now also, so Doxson I don't think is a Mistane either, because they talk about how earlier that neither him or Kelsier or Doxson were Mistanes, but they associate with them. And so, okay, so, Kelsier's a Mistborn, Doxson is not either. He's not a Mistborn. He's not a Misting. So, what is he? Is he just a dude? Right. Is he, I don't know. Interesting.
It is interesting.
So they ask Vin, after kind of explaining this, like, who are your parents? And she tells them, well, I was raised by my brother. My mom tried to basically, or that she was basically a whore in the underworld. And then we get a little tidbit that she doesn't tell them, but that, mom tried to kill her as a baby, or maybe not even as a baby, when she was very young, it says. And that Reen was the one that saved her brother. And they ask her about her father, and she kind of just looks up and says, yeah, he's a high Praelin in the Steel Ministry. And they're like, wow, that's ironic, breach of duty, breach of character for someone in that powerful position who's not supposed to be having relations with Ska, the Ska scum.
Scum.
So at this point, they're like, your father gave you a rare gift. And so this is where you find out, like, she's like, am I a Mistine? And she's like, this is when they explain that, she has access to all 8 powers and that or all 8 metals. And that makes her a Mistborn. And they also call her an Alamancer. So,
yes.
So kind of dual terms here. Alamancer is probably anybody that can access, 1 or up to 8 of these, and then kind of the distinction between a Mistine for 1 and Mistborn for 8.
Like a hereditary distinction.
Right.
It's kind of.
And so they kind of give her this information. She's the only one. Besides her, Kelsier's only met one other Mistborn in his entire life. That was a Ska. That was a Ska, very important.
Ska Mistborn.
And so she's I think taken aback by this information here. And he's like, if you were born into the nobility, you'd be like one of the most deadly and influential people. And then he kind of leans forward. And he's like, but you weren't born that way, and you don't have to play by their rules, and that makes you even more powerful. End of chapter.
I love it, man. What a great way to end the chapter. Just how are you feeling right now at the end of this chapter? A lot's changed.
Well, we talked about, I think, when we recorded, which we actually recorded yesterday, so it wasn't that long ago, but back to back, which has been good. So we had just talked about how we were asking some of those questions about, what does Mistine mean? What does Mistborn mean? So it's good to have those answers. And I think, Sanderson here has set it up good. Like, just like I feel like you, in a good book, you drop some questions that are kind of like, what is all this shit? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And then you like want to give people a few answers, like to kind of quench your thirst, or, just kind of like, you take care of that appetite, satiate that appetite.
Like almost like feeding a flame, right? Like when a fire's just starting and you're blowing a little bit of air and it's starting to catch the kindling. You don't want to blow too much in. You'll blow it out. So I think that's like a way I like to see it is too.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
For sure.
Flames of the volcanoes, of the ash mounts,
of the burning of the metals in our stomachs.
I wonder if that gets hot. Like, if you burn too much metal inside of you, does it your stomach heats up and you explode or something? That's a good question. But no, it's a good chapter.
Well, always more questions, right? Always more questions.
Good chapter. We definitely learned some things. I when I read it, I was like, I don't even know. Like, this episode is going to be so short, I thought, because I was like, what happens? Like, she threatens to, or like, she's trying to leave. She gets beat up. They come in and save her. They tell her she's a Mistborn. And I was like, that's kind of it. But, I mean, obviously, we're, almost 40 minutes into the podcast. And so There's some other
I'd
stuff
say
to go over.
that approach we take though, right, where we're going through the notes and you're kind of like picking up things because like those are the big actions of the chapter, but then there's just all this fun details kind of stuffed in there, if you're looking.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So
I totally agree. I could have saw this go fast, but I was really glad that we're here.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah.
So it's good to have some answers to some of what's going on. So I'm jazzed about that and looking forward to kind of see, I would imagine if we want to get into predictions, obviously,
Yeah, let's do it.
Kelsier has an interest probably in, kind of, I would imagine, mentoring her. She's a ska, he's a ska. He's clearly planning some kind of big uprising or overthrow of the kind of the hierarchy in this world, and the final empire. And he wants to, I would imagine he's going to try to, mentor her and kind of teach her the ways. And we'll see how that goes because she's obviously the Sloaner and she's been taught by her brother never to trust anybody, and so we'll see how apt she is to kind of following along and tagging along with this group and how that's going to go for her. So we'll see.
Nice. I'm excited to see this meeting, that we cleared out this place for and what's going to happen. And, it's going to be a good time.
For sure.
I was curious if you had any more like major questions or what kind of new questions were popping up with your mind, like what kind of things were you thinking,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We kind of talked about, I had a couple questions that I dropped. I think kind of as we went through that.
Yeah.
So I am thinking, this doesn't really answer your question, but I was thinking back to the prologue, and I just was wondering when, like, I would imagine we're going to catch a scene here or a chapter of I would like to see the group that was at Trestine's manor, like on his fields, that group of ska. Are we going to check back in with them? So that would be Menace and... what was the other guy's name? The one that was supposedly the leader,
the punk.
Yeah, the one that nobody liked.
I liked Menace.
Yeah, no,
I already forgot. Menace was awesome. He was old school and he'd been through it. Hold on, Tepper.
Yeah, Tepper,
Goodman Tepper. Yeah, I just pulled that one up. The Goodmans, of the village. Yeah, I too really was relating with the ska folk toiling out in the land. I really liked them, and I was feeling the same way right about now. On my first read through. Yep. So I hear you.
So we'll see if we get back to them. So that's something that's kind of on my mind, and then really I'm excited to see who are these other characters that we briefly heard about in chapter 2.
Yep.
We
got some names.
With Kelsier and Dox when they first kind of meet up and they go over this laundry list of people that are going to be at this meeting. And so, what are their backstories and what are we even meeting about? Like, what's the plan?
Right. He mentioned Marsh, who was Kelsier's brother. He mentioned Clubs, the smoker. He mentioned Clubs had a nephew. What is it? Nephew?
Yeah, quite a few people.
Breeze and Ham.
Yeah, Ham.
And I am really excited to see who these people are too. I'll just put it that way. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah. So it's that's what I'm looking forward to, and just seeing what that's all gonna look like. So
cool, man.
Yeah.
I love it. One of the things I also just think about in this chapter and kind of like the breadcrumbs, right, that Sanderson's given us. I think I see the I see the reward on like looking at these misting terms and kind of like paying attention to the luck and the allomancy, but also like, we haven't really seen any mist like since we've left the rural area. Like there's been no like big talk of the Mist, and so that's just one of those like outstanding breadcrumb things that I don't know, I just go so intrigued, right? Like everybody was so afraid of it
Right.
in the town in the beginning, and it really like sunk me in. And then he kind of just like he's kind of putting it down for a little bit, right? We're focusing on some other
Yeah.
stuff. So I like it, and yeah, I just think that at this point, I'm excited to see the Mist the next time,
Sure.
and when that's going to
Yeah.
be, and what
That's
it's
a
gonna
great
look like.
point. That's a good point. So
Yeah,
yeah.
because we're Mistborns, we're Mistings,
Yeah.
we're Misty
How does
boys,
it
drinking crispy
how
boys.
does it how does it relate to
Yeah,
Mistborn? Yeah,
what's
that's
it have to
that's
do?
interesting. So
Or like what's going on with
yeah.
it? Like it's still just it's it's
Yeah.
interesting. And I think something that is a great question.
Yeah. And
throughout
like
the
Kelsier's obviously not afraid of being in this mist like everybody else is.
right,
Um
right. Well, how come he's not
right.
afraid?
Because
Because
he's
he's the survivor of
right.
Hudson,
Or because he's got all these
he's a
powers. Yeah.
Mistborn? Yeah, right. Like, it probably doesn't bother him. Like, what's, a Mistborn, that adds up,
Sure.
like I see that,
Sure.
right? Like, that adds up. But yeah, I love it. And just getting the vial in and like, the vial for me as a, like, having been through the whole series, seeing the vials, like the one he takes, like right before he pulls the Inquisitor's emotions, and then, when the one he shares with Vin, like I get excited about the
Yeah.
vials. Whenever there's vials, I'm just like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
There's
And
metals,
I just
like
wonder,
we're burning
like,
something.
where, that's a good question. Where are these vials coming from? Like, is there a
Mhm.
Allomancy store that you can go to and
Right.
buy metals that have been
Yeah, right.
shaved down into an alcohol solution? Or do you have to,
Great. Well, it seems like, yeah, like
Is-
that's like kind of premeditated,
for
right?
sure. Like someone had to put
yeah,
some thought
like
into
that's
it. And so, like, since they're a ska,
right.
they're not supposed to have that. Is it, like, do they have bootleg, like, it's like bootleg
Nice.
liquor, like
yeah, I like that.
that
Right.
they're
Yeah,
that they're
no, I
doing
think it's a great
themselves,
point.
and like maybe the Steel Ministry, who clearly is involved and has probably people that are allomancers. Are they like maybe they make a really great concoction of metals and some kind of solution, and so maybe the ska who don't have the right equipment or access to the mines or whatever, maybe they can't make it as easily or something,
Right,
So-
right. Yeah, how are they coming about it? I love it. Great questions. Yeah, no, that's fun. I think that's good stuff. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what goes on next. So great episode, man. There we go. Yeah,
Awesome.
good
Thanks.
45s.
Yeah. So we'll be on to chapter 4 next. And yeah, I'm super excited to keep reading. So
Me too.
awesome.
Want to say a huge shout out to all our listeners
yeah.
out there.
All
Thank you for listening.
2.5 of them.
You made it this far. Yeah, all 2.5 of them. Yeah, just
Yep.
I wanted to thank everybody.
thank our
and,
moms.
yeah, hope
Our
you're
moms
enjoying it.
are 2
Yeah,
of the
for
2.5
sure.
listeners. So that's nice.
Yep, definitely thanking our moms. Yep, and yeah, to all the homies out there, stay safe, stay misty, stay crispy,
And have some shenanigans.
and have some shenanigans. Looking forward to you next time on Shards and Shenanigans.
Take care. Bye
Take
bye.
care. Bye. Okay.